The crate came in on the 0400 freight shuttle from the Vereth primary depot, routed through 3 relay points, and labeled in 4 languages, 2 of which I don't read. The one I do read said, "Return to origin, non-viable specimen, priority processing." In 11 years on the Orvath Reach Port South floor, that meant exactly one thing. Whatever was inside had already been decided about, and my job was to log it, tag it, and move it to the collection bay for the Sovereignty courier to pick up. That was a Tuesday. The Sovereignty courier did not come on Tuesday. He didn't come Wednesday either, or the Thursday after that. I am a freight sorter. I sort freight. I have a system involving a clipboard, a set of colored tags, and a deep personal policy of not getting involved in things that other people have already decided about. I've held that policy for 11 years, and it has served me well. I clock in at 3:30 in the morning. I clock out before the day shift workers arrive. I eat my lunch at a corner of the south loading floor, where the skylight throws a column of morning light across the concrete. I do not, as a rule, open crates that are marked for collection by other people. I opened that one on the Friday because it had started making a sound. Not a loud sound, not an alarm or a distress signal, or anything that would have brought anyone else over. A small, exhausted sound, the kind that something makes when it has been making a larger sound for a long time and has mostly run out of the energy for it. I stood there with my clipboard for a while, listening. Then I set the clipboard down on the stack of transit panels behind me, unlatched the crate, and looked inside. The hatchling was white, not the pale cream of an unpigmented scale set or the gray-white of a cooling body. White the way snow is white, the way something looks when every color has simply declined to show up. It was curled in the back corner of the crate, on a square of packing foam, and it was the size of a lunch pail. Its eyes were closed, its wings were folded flat in the way wings fold when there is nothing left in the body to hold them up. The tip of its tail moved once while I was looking at it, a slow reflex, the kind of thing that happens when a small thing is not yet sure whether to keep going. I went and got water from the drinking tap at the north wall. I came back with a dented aluminum cup, crouched down, and tipped a little into the corner of the crate near the hatchling's nose. It drank. That was the first problem. The second problem was that when I came back the next morning, the Sovereignty courier still had not come, and the hatchling was up on its feet, unsteady, listing slightly to the left, but on its feet. And when I opened the crate, it made the sound again, the small, exhausted sound, except this time, it was looking at me while it made it. I went and got more water. I went and got a portion of the dried root grain from my lunch kit, the kind I keep for long shifts, and I crumbled some of it into the cup, and it ate. I have a deep personal policy of not getting involved. I also have a deep personal policy of not letting things that are looking at me go hungry, and after 11 years these two policies had never conflicted until that moment, so I had never had to think about which one mattered more. I found out on that Saturday morning which one mattered more. I named it Pale. It was not a creative name, it was a descriptive name. I was a freight sorter, not a poet, and the hatchling was white, and it needed to be called something, because after the first week, it had learned my footstep on the loading floor and started lifting its head when it heard me coming, and I was not going to spend 11 weeks crouching next to a crate saying nothing. I told myself regularly that I was going to forward the crate as soon as the courier came. The courier did not come. The day shift supervisor told me twice that the Vereth Sovereignty was backlogged on collections, and I should keep the tag and wait. I kept the tag. I kept feeding Pale. Eventually, out of dried root grain I started buying at the provisions counter near the east gate and storing in the bottom of my kit bag. Pale grew. Not fast, draconic hatchlings don't, in the early weeks, but steadily, the way a plant grows if you keep water coming. By the 5th week it could stand without listing. By the 7th, it had filled out across the chest and shoulders, the scale edges sharpening from soft and overlapping to distinct and clean. By the 9th week it had started doing something I had not expected, waiting at the front corner of the crate instead of the back, and when I unlatched the door, it pressed the top of its head against my palm, a slow, deliberate push, the way something does when it wants you to know it knows you are there. I was 61 years old, and I had worked the dock for 11 years, and I had never been anyone's anything. I just sorted freight. I thought about that sometimes, eating my lunch in the column of morning light, while Pale slept in the crate, with the door open, and its tail draped out across the concrete. I thought about the crate label, non-viable specimen. I thought about what that meant to the people who wrote it, the mark readers, the lineage trackers, the Verith color keepers, who cataloged every hatchling by the sovereignty marks in the scale color and couldn't read a white one because there was nothing there to read. I thought about how you decide something is nothing before it's had a chance to be anything. Then I ate my lunch and I didn't say it to anyone, because I was a freight sorter and it wasn't my business. And besides, Pale was asleep. The color keeper arrived on a Wednesday, 11 weeks and 2 days after the crate. She was vast. That is the only word. There are words that exist for the purpose of describing dragons of authority, words like ancient and sovereign and iron-plated and ridge-scarred, and they are all accurate, but when she came through the South Bay door at first light, wings folded, ridge scales the color of old pewter, eyes like deep water, with something moving far underneath, the word that came to me was vast. She took up the whole bay. She took up more of it than the bay technically contained. There were 2 younger dragons behind her, copper-brown, watching. She looked at the crate. She looked at the open door. She looked at Pale, who was sitting in the open doorway of the crate on its haunches, with its head up, looking at me, because I had just arrived with the morning grain, and it was waiting. The color keeper was very still for a long time. I said, in my best approximation of respectful and not panicked, that the collection had been delayed, and I had been maintaining the specimen in the interim. I said I understood if the return order was still in effect, and I had not intended to cause any administrative disruption. I said the grain was from the provisions counter at the east gate, and I had the receipts if they were needed. She was not looking at me. She was looking at Pale. Pale looked back at her for a moment, the way it looked at everything it had not yet decided about. Then it turned back and pressed its chin down onto my knee. The color keeper made a sound I had not heard before. It was low and continuous, a resonance in the concrete under my feet, and in the steel of the transit panels behind me, and somewhere at the back of my teeth. The 2 copper-brown dragons behind her lowered their heads. She spoke in Varith, which I do not understand. Then she shifted, tilted her head, and spoke again, slower, shaped differently. You kept her. I said I had. I said the collection hadn't come. You kept her, she said again, and it was not a question the second time. It was something else, something that sat differently in the air. She looked at Pale for a long time. Then she looked at me, and the deep water in her eyes moved. There are no marks to read, she said. She is the first. We have not had a first in 400 years. She paused, a long and considered pause, the kind that something does when it is measuring a weight. The record will say she is Keth Davin. It means the one who knew where to go before we had a name for the place. I didn't say anything. I didn't have anything to say. Pale pushed her chin harder into my knee. I reached down and gave her the rest of the morning grain, because she was hungry, and it was there, and that was the job. The color keeper watched me do it without moving. The 2 copper-brown dragons behind her had not lifted their heads. I stayed until the end of my shift. I clocked out the same way I always do, signed the log, left the clipboard on its hook by the east door. The crate in Bay 11 was empty when I left. I stopped at the provisions counter on my way to the transit platform and bought the usual measure of dried root grain. Force of habit. Force of something.